Rev up your engines! It's time for the Scotty Kilmer channel. I'm going to show you how to fix a misfiring engine. Now this Audi is running poorly and the check engine light is on. And when I hook the scan tool under the dash, it says P0301, cylinder number 1 misfire detected. Now many things can make an engine misfire, but let's start with the basic one, the spark plugs and coils. On this Audi you can pull all of the coil-on plugs off. Then to get to the spark plugs, we'll get a socket and a ratchet, stick it in the hole and pull out the spark plug. And in this case, we can see that it's really burned out. There's a bunch of crud on the spark plug. Unfortunately for the owner of the car, that means the engine's wearing out on this particular Audi design. Because when we check another spark plug, it's not quite as bad, but it's got a bunch of crud on it too. And when we look at the last spark plug from number 4, it doesn't have much crud on it at all, which means that the only cylinder on this car that's really in good shape is number 4. Number 1, 2, and 3 are pretty well worn. Now 4 new spark plugs will make it run better. It won't fix the underlying problem, which is an engine that's just flat worn out, but it'll make it run better. You just have to realize on these gasoline direct injection Audi turbocharged engines, they only last so long, and if you don't change the oil a lot, they'll start burning it because they wear out inside from all the friction. And since it did have the number 1 misfire, we're going to try a trick just to check that out. We're going to take the number 1 coil and swap it out and put it in the number 4 coil place. And of course then we're going to put the number 4 coil in the number 1 place. If the number 1 coil is bad when we drive it around, if it now says misfire cylinder number 4 instead of 1, we'll know that that coil is also bad and we'll replace that coil. Because often the best test is to swap a part with another one that's the same part, and if the problem moves to that area, you know that's the part that causes the problem. So now we'll slap this coil-on plugs back on top of the spark plugs, line them all up and pop them in, and put the little screws in that hold it in place. Then start her up and take her for a drive. Now I've taken it for a ride, and guess what? The check engine light came back on. And when we hooked up the scanner, again it says cylinder number 1 misfire. So in this case, we know it's not a bad ignition coil because we put the number 1 coil on 4 and 4 on 1. Since it's still misfiring on 1, then there's a problem in cylinder 1. And since the number 1 spark plug is so fouled out, that's no surprise. The engine's just flat wearing out inside that cylinder. I did a compression test of the engine, and it's only got like 80 psi in the number 1, where the number 4 one has 170 pounds pressure, so we know the engine's just flat worn out. So the engine basically needs to be rebuilt, and being a complex Audi, nobody's going to spend that kind of money. It's 3-4 times what the car's worth. But it runs quite a bit better now. He can just drive it till he drops if he wants to. Just keep changing the spark plugs every couple of months. It's a shame it just couldn't have been a bad ignition coil, but hey, that's the breaks with these fancy German cars. You don't want to put too much money into them, they'll bankrupt you. And remember, if you've got any questions, just visit the Scotty Kilmer channel.